Hey there, Laker fans. Welcome to another episode of Lakers Detailed. I'm your host, Vinay, with my co host, Raj. Raj, the Lakers get a 4-day break and they end up winning. Bron comes back, LeBron James. Um, the media decides to spend 4 days speculating on why he didn't want to play basketball or doom and gloom their way into all these different things that may be happening. But LeBron comes back. We play the Memphis Grizzlies, and we get, I would say, probably the best win that we've had of the season since like the first game of the season, like sort of end to end quality basketball for more than 3.5 quarters. The Lakers do pretty well. 24 hours removed from that. How are you doing, my friend?
I am good. The Lakers won finally in a game that I tweeted out. Memphis, they really show how serious you are, Vinay, as a team. They are a regular season kind of wins machine. I was, curious how the Lakers would look. Felt a lot like when like you have a substitute teacher and then like the real teacher comes back, and everyone has to kind of be a little bit more serious and
Yeah.
locked in. It kind of felt like that. But that was a big win, and we'll kind of get into the details of it. But wanted to keep you kind of above that 500, line of demarcation. Big win, big win. Memphis is really good. I'm high on them, especially as a
Yeah.
regular season team. I think they were fully healthy, if I have that correct. I don't think there was anyone that was out for them. I know Jay Huff got
Yeah.
hurt like middle of the game, but
Yeah.
other than that, I mean Marcus Smart's like a shell of himself and all that stuff. But I just mean from body's perspective, they had all their guys. Jaws
Yeah.
averaging like 30 a game. We'll get into why he struggled, which is probably the main point of this pod. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I just want to say before we start, I want to thank you to everyone who shared and read the Bronny piece. That
Yeah,
means a
dude.
lot, and I appreciate that. So I just want to kind of start with that as well. Very very appreciative of the support with that. But no, big Laker win yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. For the folks that don't know about it, go check Raj's Twitter feed. He or his X feed, sorry. He did an interview with Bronny and was able to ask him a couple questions. Some really great insights in regards to his development. And he had that posted up on Clutch Points. So as always, Raj, we are always invested in your success, myself as well as everybody who all the detailers that are locked in with us on a regular basis. So that's awesome, and congratulations to you. But yeah, I think the way you kind of brought it up was kind of good. Like LeBron's been out. Granted, he's only missed 2 games. Like even though the hiatus has felt like he's been lost for much, he hasn't been playing for much longer. He only missed 2 games, and after coming back, he ended up looking phenomenal. So maybe we should start there. Braun looked really, really good, and
Yeah,
Memphis is a team that plays high-paced basketball, which is always a concern for the Lakers because they don't stay consistent with their pace. Sometimes their guys get gassed out. Not Braun, but even AD does, and they have trouble with these sort of young leg teams. So the Lakers look really good, and Braun looked fantastic. Any takeaways? What were your takeaways from Braun getting that rest in
yeah.
coming
Obviously,
back?
he looked fresh. My worry, Vinay, is like there's just no room in the regular season for him to get a week and a half off before every game. So like it's tough to kind of know where that was from. But he looked good. His athleticism was there. He had a nice dunk early. He had a block, I believe, early on as well. And it was kind of the perfect situation. It's a game that you would hope would be kind of the blueprint, right? The Lakers are up 15-18 the whole game, so LeBron never really has to turn it up to to the highest point. Can
Yep.
kind of work his way in. Still didn't really have a high point total. Was kind of just distributing the basketball and like filling in here and there, which I think is what the Lakers would want. And I'm not sure the Lakers are good enough to where that's a consistent basis, especially with the teams that they're about to play.
Mm-hmm.
But good LeBron game, looked fine. 18, 7, and 7. We talked about what the floor is, and that kind of is an interesting, line there. It's 18, 7, and 7 was fine against Memphis. We'll see what it is for the future, opponents. But he looked good. He looked fresh. Obviously a lot of questions on if retirement was on his mind, but
Yeah.
he quickly stepped over those in terms of his answers. But he looked good. I want to ask you
Did you?
that though. How much of that was his just being off? You feel like just the freshness of him being off versus him healing up, I guess, for any knick-knack injuries that he might have had.
Yeah, I think for sure. he just needed some rest. I mean, he's an
Yeah.
older guy. I think like we had a stretch where we played like 7 games in 11 nights or something like that, and that's super rough for like a guy at his age because he doesn't get the time that he needs in between, especially when it's like on the road and we have a
Hmm.
bunch of road games and stuff like that. That kind of mess everything up for everybody. And it's taxing on him. So I think the rest really did him good. I was gonna say there was a funny thing that I think was posted today. I think Stephen A. Smith was on ESPN saying that like Braun, there was nothing going on with Braun. He just needed rest, and he's earned the right to have
Hmm.
rest or something like that. I think Laker fans like retweeted him saying like, "Dude, you're the one who was saying that he was trying to retire. Like nobody else to say that. Like you guys created the story, and then you guys turned around and scolded the audience, even though the audience wasn't the one who created the story." And I was just like, "What the heck, dude? Like what?" But anyways, I thought that was
Beautiful
really funny.
machine. Yeah.
Yeah. The most telling part, Raj, was it was his defense. Like he seemed very
Mm.
engaged on the defensive end,
Yeah.
and I think that's really where his batteries might have been recharged because I think JJ had a really nice, um, had a nice compliment to LeBron at the end of the post game where he kind of said that LeBron out of everybody in the group has the highest attention to detail
Mm.
of the group. But we know that like Braun physically can't do some of the stuff like on the regular, like over and over again, the way like a 25-year-old Braun would be able to do. And I think that's really the only limitation for him. So I think him getting that break has a play where I think he has like a dunk or like he has like a layup and then a chase down block on Desmond Bain. Like you kind of saw a very traditional normal LeBron, full strength LeBron that we would expect to see. Um, but hey, it's something that they've got to we need. I'm not saying we need that every game, but we definitely need that effort if we want to beat these good teams. Memphis is a good team, dude. Number 2
Really
team
good team.
in the West. They had won 9 of their last 10 coming into our matchup, so
Yeah,
it's a big game.
yeah. They're I think one of the hottest teams in the league. They come in just a solid regular season profile, fourth in offense. I think seventh in defense, like top 10 in both categories. Just a really well coached team as well. And
Mm-hmm.
Ja's been a superstar like this year. Obviously the injury or the suspensions and the injuries kind of have tainted some of the I guess image of what he is on the court. But that
Yeah,
dude's still an absolute monster. I
good monster.
remember watching Memphis. They played a game in Boston, Vinay, and like Boston again, just tainted with all the best defensive guards, and he just went right by all of them, and
Yeah,
just they had a big win in Boston. So and that was a big win. I said it earlier, and a lot of that was AD obviously also had his 40 and 16 I think. So
yeah,
it just didn't
awesome
go
game
under
for
the
AD.
radar.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of that was jump shot heavy too, which we can get to, and it's an interesting profile of when he plays well in terms of how the jump shot goes. But LeBron was good. I think they'll need more than that. Like again, it's not an attack on LeBron. It's more of a where the team's at. I think they'll need more than that to beat these type of good teams on a regular basis. But
absolutely.
against Memphis, they were up big, and maybe some of that was Memphis being in LA for 2 days. Who
Yeah,
knows? But no, that was a good win.
yeah. One of the things that I mean, like Cam Reddish looked great defensively. We're going to talk about Max Christie in a second, who looked phenomenal because he got the start defensively. But I thought the Lakers as a team looked really good defensively. There wasn't that much switching going on. JJ Redick said
Hmm.
in the post game that Memphis is a team that doesn't run pick and roll, which forces teams to switch. And so that kind of worked into the Lakers' favor defensively because they didn't have to worry about switching too much. So I think we had sort of a culmination of good things. Memphis had a couple of open threes that just didn't go down. That could have certainly gone down and changed the complexion of the game. But before we get into the Max Christie stuff, because I think that's a very fascinating thing to break him
Hmm.
down technically. You mentioned something that I think is really worth talking about. AD's jump shot. Now, AD's had a couple of games where he comes out the gates like knocking down his jump shots, and
Hmm.
it seems to get him into a flow. And these are not like they're not the Vogel era, Darvin Ham era, left block, dribble, post up, turn around, jump shot sort of jump shot. They're more like pick and roll or like some whatever the action is that JJ runs. You know better than me, and gets him like an open free throw line jump shot, that sort of one, or
Hmm.
he dribbles into it, like he brings it up the floor
Yeah.
and dribbles into that jump shot. He's looked really good. Do we need to do that more? Do we need to start off games doing that more?
it feels like the ceiling like of the team just jumps another level when he's hitting jump shots. And again, I don't know how much you can rely on that. Again, I think the good teams will continue to just leave him open. If you go watch our game against Denver, Vinay, they just completely we're okay with that shot. You know, Jokic goes way under any of these screens. He's like, I'm going to wait for you at the rim. So if not, go ahead and take your mid-range jumpers. But I think it's important. I think when you look at just the starters, if LeBron's not shooting threes, and obviously you've taken D'Lo out of the starting lineup to put more defense, which I think both of us agree was the right move there, but that puts a lot of the 3-point volume on Austin's kind of plate. And that's, and maybe also on Max Christie's play, whatever it is. All the other people are, jump shot. They don't really rely on their jumper. So yeah, I think it's big if AD can hit jump shots. I don't know how consistent that will be. I think he goes up and downs in terms of his confidence level. But I like Vinay that it doesn't have to be a three. It seems like he's kind of entered the mid-range jump shot more into his shot diet, which I think gets him going. I think it gets him to the line. I think it gets him going downhill. I think it just puts more, like, gives him more usage in a way that, like, if he's just taking hook shots or dunks, that he doesn't get in the rhythm. So I think it's important. He's not gonna drop 40 every night. That was his second 40-point game of the season. Other one was against San Antonio.
Yeah,
forgot which game it was, but yeah, he was awesome. He dominated that game, and something about Memphis just like they see the Grizzlies and just it rejuvenates the team for some reason. And maybe there's some personal like back and forth trash talking that's not really public, but definitely feels like there's some extra juice and focus when we play the young Grizzlies.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, does our whole team get up for this Grizzlies team? Because it seems like every time we play them,
Feels
we
like
play like some of our best basketball against them. So I don't know if it's in-game trash talk or if it's just since we knocked them out of the playoffs 2 playoffs ago or whatever. Like it's always just kind of been there. They always rehash the John Morant thing and that's. The other thing I was gonna say is I wonder if AD went to his jumper a little bit early and with more confidence because the first time they played the Grizzlies, he wasn't. And he was trying to sort of play Edie straight up. I think Edie started that game. And it felt like this time Edie was like, okay, I know they're not going to let me get to the rim as easily as I'd like, the way I'd normally like. So this jump shot's going to be open. So I wonder if like mentally in his mind, he was like, oh, I could, like, this is going to be wide open. Like it's not going to be guarded. And that sort of gave him more confidence. And honestly, dude, like it's a great game-to-game adjustment because it's the second time we've played them. But I'd love for him to like think about it like that going into games. Like if you kind of know, and obviously the coaches have to help prepare him for that. Like the reason why I say this is because the Minnesota game, we started off with a lot of Austin heavy action, like a lot, and it was Minnesota put Jaden McDaniels on Austin, and Austin was having a tough time. He had a bunch of turnovers and tough misses and stuff like that. And I felt like we went through like the first 8 possessions with AD not even attempting a shot. I might be wrong, but it just felt like that. And so like when Bron isn't there, I don't see a reason for us to not have him, be the guy who leads us with the shot selection, let the guys play off of him based on what happens with him. So I'd like to see that more. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and also like Jaren Jackson Jr. just can't guard him, and Memphis just doesn't have an option to guard him. And it's funny, Vinay, like the next day Memphis was rumored for Jonas Valanciunas. It's that's perfect, just absolutely
now
perfect.
It's a 2-team bidding war. You know what that means?
Lakers and Grizzlies are both interested in Jonas Valanciunas the day after AD just eats up their front court. But yeah, Jackson and then Zach Edey is just not the guy. I mean, he's a rookie. Less lateral movement with his feet. I thought AD just got downhill, a bunch of cuts as well, off ball, and he was just able to score. These type of teams, I don't worry about AD scoring range. It's the Sabonis's, the Jokic's, those guys really give him trouble. But teams like Memphis, he's gonna eat against whether his jumper's going or not. But yeah, the mid-range jumper is a good acquisition for him to like continue to add. Especially if LeBron's jumper is going to be kind of up and down.
I'm actually to the point where it's like I would rather, like, if he's not comfortable taking threes, I'd rather him just take the long 2. Like take one dribble in and just take the long 2. I'm okay with that. If you don't feel like you're going to get the foul, like if you're not getting foul calls when you drive to the rim, like obviously the player has to judge that. But like if I was a coach, I would be like, okay, look, if you're not getting calls at the rim, like he was getting calls against, like he had Jaren Jackson in foul trouble, so that worked out. but against teams where you don't get that and they're giving you that mid range shot, I was like, just take it.
Yeah.
Like I'm okay with the 42% or whatever it is that he shoots from mid range. Hopefully it's not worse than that. But I would rather that than like the 30 whatever percent he's shooting from three. Or
Yeah.
the alternative is that he's like looking around for one of his guards to take the ball out of his hands. It's like, no, like you should continue to be aggressive as a scorer with the ball in your hands. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, in single coverage, I think AD just has to score. Like, I think if he's in single coverage against most bigs, I'd like him to score.
Yeah.
One final, funny part with AD, he had like the shoulder injury, right,
Yeah.
and was out. And sometimes AD always does this, but he comes back, Renee, from like an injury like that, and then he's like diving on the floor while we're up like 12. Like, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, don't need to dive on the floor. You're up like 15. Let it go, man. You just came back from a shoulder
It's
injury.
it's like the
Like,
guy who sprains his ankle and then has like a crazy acrobatic layup like the
yeah,
very next possession. It's just like what? Like this like the exact opposite was supposed to happen here. You're supposed to settle for a jump shot. But yeah,
right.
it's a funny thing. Raj, the 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 next big thing aside from Braun coming back and obviously the Lakers getting the win, um, was JJ Redick before the game started, giving kind of a precursor, a lead into what his starting lineup would be for the start of the game. And basically, he said that he wanted to have somebody who can bring some defensive attitude, defensive grit to the starting lineup, help with rebounding, and then obviously knock down a couple threes here and there. Essentially, describing a 3-and-D guy that he wanted to
Yeah.
have, and he was basically trying to evaluate who's the right person to put in that position. And it ends up being you and I both suspected it would be Max Christie because that's basically the role that the Lakers would be trying to groom him into. And lo and behold, it ends up being Max Christie. I want
Yeah.
to say that we should give ourselves as well as all the other Lakers detailed folks a pat on the back because I know that before the season started, we discussed Max Christie getting the start next to Austin Reeves.
Yeah.
Though we knew that there was some politics behind, both of them starting together. Um, it seemed like they complemented each other better because of what they were. But Max had a rough start to the season, so he's been kind of up and down.
Hmm.
But he's since his benching, he's become. I would say he's gotten better and better and more confident in himself. So I don't know what was causing the funk at the start, and then he finally gets a start. And Raj, he played some phenomenal defense on John Morant, which is not easy to do
Hmm.
for anybody. Like you said, the Celtics couldn't stay in front of him. Max will get beat sometimes, but for the most part, I thought he did a really great job using his body to prevent Ja from getting to the rim. What did you take away from his performance
Yeah.
against the Grizzlies?
So I've never seen a player guard John Morant and just guess correct on every spin move. Like, it just does not happen. And I thought he guessed correct every single time. And you not only have to guess correct, you can guess right and still get embarrassed by John Morant. The ability to kind of guess correct and absorb the contact, right, and able to still defend him at the rim. There were so many plays where like Ja would spin, jump on his elevator, and Max is right there contesting him at the basket,
Yeah,
and that inch right there forced a miss. Forgot what Jaws shot from the field, but I think it was like 4 for 16 or some, number like that. He really struggled. He took a lot of outside shots, which again, you kind of welcome with John Morant. Max was awesome, man. And credit, for you were saying Dalton, Max, and Austin got to play
they
30
gotta
a
play.
night.
Yeah,
And I feel like that, that number just continues to climb and
yeah, it's coming.
kind of getting to your crescendo of what you're
Yeah,
asking for. But no, he looked awesome. And I give a lot because I think last year Renee Max was the can do no wrong kid, and
for
like
sure.
any of the Lakers issues was poured on to even like Darvin Ham's terrible because he's not playing Max. Like anything you
Yeah,
wanted to say that was bad about the team, you could put onto the positive light of Max Christie.
yeah,
And struggled to start the year, and I think it shows a lot of resilience too. And he was playing with the G Leaguers like in crunch time for a lot of the minutes this season where it would be garbage time. He's playing next to Jalen Hood-Schifino and Maxwell Lewis, and
yeah,
no disrespect to those guys, but Max Christie just got the extension, just got paid, right? And this feels more like the player the Lakers extended this
yeah,
summer. Very athletic. No more. Remember, Vinay, he would do all of these drives where it's like, where are you going? Kind of
yeah,
trying to dunk with no plan in place, or and like you credit the I guess, the fire to do that. But a lot of times it would be against like really good shot blockers. He would go at
Yeah.
like with two-handed dunks that would be denied. But it looks like he just looks in control and looks like the game is slowed down. And last night was just an awesome kind of defensive performance. What did you see from
Yeah.
Max?
So I think his athleticism always jumps out at all times. I think we've talked about his athleticism a bunch of times. But one of the things I think is really interesting about him is his ability to recover if he gets
Mm,
beat. Like he does a really nice job using his length and helping defend without fouling. And one of the things I think was a little tough for Max was him trying to gauge how physical he's allowed to be with certain players. Like the physicality, like when he was playing defense against Ja was the one who was initiating a lot of the collisions, and because the refs were allowing them to play, he
mm,
wasn't getting blocking fouls, so Max wouldn't get called for blocks. And it was, he just absorbing the collision in the chest or lower body, whatever it's supposed to be. And I'm really curious to see that if he continues to start, which I think he's going to, how that continues to hold up, because I think his best skill is athleticism, but his second best skill is like his ruggedness defensively.
mm.
Like he's he's deceivingly strong for a guy who kind of looks skinny, doesn't look like he has like a lot of weight on him, but he's deceivingly strong. He absorbs a lot of collisions. He can get mismatched on a forward and like not give up a ton of ground unless the forward's like heavy and like posting him up or something like that. So like face up basketball, I like Max's chances defensively so long as the refs allow him to be physical. And this is like one of those things where I think he might not get the favorable call, favorable whistle, or like the favorable
Mm-hmm.
refereeing
Mm-hmm.
until he builds a name for himself. Like you see guys like Lou Dort, like straight up foul dudes, like over and over again. And like even the borderline stuff, or not the border, like the egregious stuff, they don't get called for because they like get some leeway from the refs about it, because of their reputation. And I'm hoping that Max builds enough of a rapport with the refs
Mm.
that they're like, yeah, like this is not a, like this is a play on, because I feel like the more play on situations that Max gets in, the more you're going to see him win those matchups. Like you saw with like Ja, like there's a couple times where he just stopped Ja,
Yeah.
and like Ja, I think he had one where Ja like kind of tried to force him all the way to the rim, and then try to take like a foot like a 2 foot like a standing vertical floater or something, and Max met him right at the rim.
Yeah.
After absorbing everything, and Ja's a super explosive guy. So it's like stuff like that. Like I hope he figures that part out, what that dance is supposed to be like, and how to work with the refs.
Yeah, it reminded me of remember last year he had a game against Donovan Mitchell, very similar
Hmm.
kind of situation on the road in Cleveland. And Mitchell, again, very similar to Ja, obviously has more of a jump shot, in his game, but I thought Max was fantastic, stayed on him. And, I think everyone thought like, hey, this guy should probably stay in the rotation.
Yeah,
And then I think Cam Reddish came back a few games
yeah,
later and just
yeah,
tanked that out of here. But yeah, I thought last night was similar in that fashion. But I wonder, like, so Max has, obviously he's earned the start now, but he was playing a lot with like second units, and I just wonder if like playing next to like AD, for example, for more minutes or stuff like that helps him. And last night, obviously, and you brought it up. JJ said they weren't switching as much, and
yeah,
some of that has to do with Memphis not running as much ball screen action. Memphis does run ball screen action, Vinay, but they don't run a lot of like guard to guard screens,
yeah,
right? So their stuff is more just with the big and Jaw instead of like, at the end, Jaw started picking on Rui
yeah,
for a little bit, which, were more guard or wing to guard screens, but they run a lot of just Jaren Jaw stuff or, Jaw, Zach Edey stuff, which the Lakers didn't switch. And I think that helps Max Christie. I think
yeah,
that's a guy that like, when he plays next to players that do fight over and he's able to kind of lock in on his man. I don't know. The team played obviously a lot more inspired defensive basketball, but just honing in on Max Christie. He was able to just be like, Jaw's my matchup. Like, there's no switching going on, fighting over these screens.
yeah,
You're not, Austin's not going to switch on to him, this easily. You're going to have to work for that. And like if Max is good, I think this just, again, it puts Dalton in a position where he doesn't have to have 18 a night for the Lakers to be competitive.
for sure.
And you add another young leg to this, and I think it just slots people Vinay in the right place. I think Cam Reddish starting is just, I think that's a talent gap just in terms
Yeah,
of who you are in the league. But if Max Christie can start and Cam Reddish is your psycho defender off the bench, it's a pretty good role for him.
Yeah, and I think Max doesn't take as many risks as
Mm,
Cam does defensively. Like
yeah,
Cam will try to set up the steal from behind or set up the steal, try to anticipate into a steal. Like he tries to anticipate into like the statistical play, which might be like a steal or a block. And I feel like Max is more of a like a conservative defender in the sense that like his goal is just to stay in between you and the rim. That's really what his goal is, and challenge your shots, not to do
yeah,
anything more than that. And so I'm with you. I have a question. Do you think, obviously there's rumors of the Lakers adding another big, adding
yeah,
Jonas and whatnot. Do you think the team would benefit from mixing in more drop coverage, like against teams that have like these kind of bigs that are like Zach Edey, J Huff, like the ones that
y-
are a little bit more plotters, not so much like the dynamic,
yeah, yeah.
scoring vibes?
Yeah, so I think the whole point and drop coverage, obviously, it's been around, but it kind of got really, but it's more like a modern, philosophy and
Yeah.
in just terms of the terminology. What it really does, Vinay, is try to keep basketball a 2-on-2, right? It's kind of like, hey, we're gonna stay at home with everybody, and we're gonna make this like ball screen a 2-on-2 action. I love like Max Christie and AD as like a defensive we don't really think of like defensive combos, right? We think that's more of like an offensive conversation, like, who are the best combos like on offense. But I love Max and AD as a defensive combo. Those two have a lot of length, obviously a lot of athleticism, and they work well off of each other. Max and AD had like really, it was funny. They had a quote from Max Christie, Vinay, that I don't know if you don't listen to the broadcast, but they, that they had a Mike Trudell said Max Christie was saying there's a lot of introverts on the team, which
Uh,
is a little strange for how many
yeah.
vets are on the
Yeah.
squad. But he's like, there's a lot of introverts, so we don't talk a lot on defense. Um,
What?
yeah, that was a
It's
real
like
thing.
it's like a core function of good defense is communication, and that's like the
Yeah,
opposite for us. That's not good.
yeah,
But go ahead.
yeah. But he's like, there's a lot of introverts on the team, so we need to talk more. But it felt like AD and Max were having a lot of like conversation, especially on the jaw action and stuff like that. But no, I've been proponent of that. I don't like the switching. I think we go to it as a crutch way too much. And yeah, some drop coverage with guys like Max who can chase over screens. I think it's an advantage for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think not only does it help Max, I think it does help the team. It's
Mhm,
probably very situational. You have to run it based on like the personnel that you see on the floor. So
sure.
if you see a backup big or whatever it is, that's not really a threat to be a really good rim runner or whatever. It is what it is. You can probably test that out. So I'd actually like to see them do that. I wonder if it would kind of force the Lakers perimeter guys to have to fight over screens as opposed to and break some of that lazy habit stuff that we've been discussing because they just hand guys off. So I'll be very curious to see if we end up getting a backup big if we start going back to that a little bit more.
Do you think so now that Max is starting and it's kind of like, okay, here's our two guard starter. I think Dalton like will have a say in this, Vinay, again. I feel like those two are gonna kind of swap at some point again. Either Max struggles or Dalton just becomes Inferno, or do you just see this as like the permanent, barring a trade that brings in a guard that leaps
Yeah,
Max, I guess, in terms of star power or whatever. I can see a world where Dalton still ends up the starter, but where are you at with that? I saw them. I'm not trying to pit Max and Dalton,
yeah.
against each other. That
Lakers
won't
Twitter's
work. But
favorite thing to do.
it's
Who's the new
very
guy and who do we bump out of the rotation? Yeah.
very strange. So one of the Max Christie Muse or something will come at me, but just
So
just
many. It's literally Rod. It's got to be one guy that's just got. He's running all 15 of those accounts for Lakers Twitter. the
I
JJ
saw
Redick news.
saw a Muse account today from like a guy that's not in the league. It's like, what are we? There was like I forgot who it was, but it's just like, what are we doing? Like,
Just
but yeah,
just post your own picture on Twitter and just be a normal human being. I promise people will discuss things with you without being Muse accounts. But I don't know if Dalton will. Is it possible that Dalton comes back into the situation, back into the fold? Yes. My only
mhm,
thing is I think Dalton has. Um, he's still a rookie, and you can tell that he's still adjusting to the NBA, everything in general. Like
mm,
the shooting part and the ability to score the basketball will always be there. I don't think that's going to be anything. But like the stretch that Dalton was starting, and he started basically being on the scouting report, like you could tell that
Yeah.
he was having some issues. Like if they didn't run set plays for him and give him screens to get him open, he was not like he was having trouble. And if it's not like a transition look, like he didn't know how to attack. He wasn't attacking closeouts. Like he was just kind of having some trouble doing all of that. And I think in order for him to break back into it, or sorry, not only was he having issues with that, like his attention to the details outside of scoring the basketball were very poor, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like he would let guys just run by him to grab offensive rebounds. He would get lost in rotations. He'd go double for no reason at all. Like he had to play when Memphis kind of made a comeback against that bench unit where he went to go double off of Luke Kennard, and Luke
Mm-hmm.
Kennard just knocks down a three. Like I was just like, okay, you're not paying attention to like even the assignment, like who the real shooter is, and like it's not as if D'Lo needed the help when he went to go help him. Like small stuff like that can kind of catch up to you, and I think if he gets back into the starting lineup, I suspect it'll be because he's started to get better in that area,
Sure.
and I think we can talk about this, Roger, because I think this is something. This is a deeper thing that I think we should maybe discuss. The Lakers have gone back to like heavy Braun usage in the first quarters of our games. Like,
Mm.
I'd have to look and see exactly when it started happening, but it feels like he has a lot of command of the basketball in the first quarters of games. Atlanta game comes to mind. This Memphis game does come to mind. He didn't play against Minnesota, so we didn't see that very much. Miami game comes to mind. Braun had a really great game there. And one of the things is that when Braun is heavy on the ball, there's this idea that you have to give him spacing and shooters and all that sort of stuff, which is true. Like you have to give him
Mm-hmm.
spacing and shooters. But there's this aspect of it where you're giving him the spacing and shooters, but he's not really looking to create for those guys because it's a first quarter of the game. Like your stars are probably going to try and get themselves going. Like I'm going to get shots in and get like the ball going through the hoop. So then my role players around me can see the bucket going, and then it's easier for them to step in. They don't feel pressured to have to score early in the game. I think when Braun is in that mode, if that's how it's going to be, and I'm not saying it's going to be like that all the time, but if that's how it's going to be, I think it's more beneficial to have a guy like Max Christie because you already have Austin Reeves on the floor,
Mm.
and AD's there too, obviously. Rui's also there too, obviously. I think you have enough scoring
Offense.
for
Mm-hmm.
for Braun to go to, where Dalton doesn't make sense to be part of that lineup. It makes more sense to have a guy who's very, very defensive centric in that role because it's almost especially when the drop off defensively with Dalton is significant compared to Max.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way of describing it?
That makes sense, and I think Max kind of is the perfect kind of glove in hand fit for those starters. If he's like what we hope he is, which is that 3-and-D kind of player, that he's also an awesome cutter as well. Dalton still kind of find his way with that, and I think Dalton fits well with D'Lo. I think that's a nice like mix off the bench. I think those two kind of give a nice scoring punch. I can see it. I think there's a world where Dalton just lights the world on fire, and I think JJ's lives just a little bit vicariously through Dalton connecting
For sure.
in some sense. So I can see him re-entering it. It was funny, Vinay, because JJ was describing that player like you just talked about, and he described what he wanted, what he was going to start at the fifth spot as, and I think Max Christie was the only player that fit that description. So I don't know who he was hiding from, but he's like point of attack guy, 2-way that can knock down threes. It's like
Weird.
there's
Very
one
weird.
player there's one player on the
Do
team.
you think? Does it seem like he was sending a message to the rest of the players on the roster when he said that? If we had to get into conspiracies, like why would he say that? Why would you declare that out loud? Why wouldn't you just say, "Oh, I'll let you know who the starters are when the starters are"? Because
Right.
he can be an asshole like that and say stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a message, but I mean, like, I guess I think he was trying to pump up maybe the defensive, point of it. Like when you say 2-way guy, you kind of cut off a good amount of players, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have like that big of a roster.
Yeah, so like you cut off Cam, you cut off D'Lo, and you cut off a good amount. Unless you're talking about Gabe Vincent, that's another small guard, right?
Yeah.
And I think most people he was talking about the two guard position. But yeah, it's just funny when you look at the Lakers roster and it's like, yeah, Max Christie's the only 2-way guard on the team. So I thought that was funny. But no, good for Max. I think we both said early in the year, I keep pushing this. There's no good Laker team where Max isn't a part of it. It just
Yeah.
doesn't exist, and it looks like he's a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're rooting for Max. And obviously we want to see him continue to be successful. If I was a Lakers fan and I'm watching Max or like evaluating Max because he's like the fifth guy, like the new guy, as part of the group, I'm watching his physicality and how he gets refed because I think that is
Mhm.
a huge part of his success. Like I said, like he's a conservative. He's like a not conservative. I need to come up with a better word. He's like a disciplined defender. He won't
Yeah,
gamble too much, and he'll always try to keep himself between the rim and the basketball. But if refs, decide that touch fouls are all going to be called, that might work against Max. So I could certainly see a game where Max plays against somebody who's a superstar or something like that, gets tasked on him, and he picks up 2 early fouls in the first quarter, and Lakers Twitter will be super upset that they'll be like, oh, you suck or whatever it might be. But for the most part, it's just like Jordan's saying in the YouTube chat,
yeah,
he's a great technical defender. He has really great technical fundamentals defensively. Um, it just sometimes the physicality goes against him, and I hope he gets his reps up when it comes to that.
yeah. Just and it's nice to have a player that's been in your system and has grown in your system, and a young guy that you kind of invested in. I think that's part of why I think most Laker fans, they look at Max through that lens, and not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying like you look at things differently through a player that has been in your draft system and a guy you want to work out. And it's nice. He's still young, and he's 21 years old, so a lot of potential there to be picked up. And yeah, happy for Max. Hopefully this continues because it was a rough start for sure on both ends of the floor. I thought he
Yeah.
looked lost on a lot of places, so it's good that he's found himself.
Yeah. So we'll be interested to see how it goes. It's definitely a great win after a really bad loss to Minnesota. So I'm glad that the Lakers are picking up wins against teams that probably people think that we weren't going to beat.
Yeah,
Fans think that we weren't going to beat. It's great to see LeBron be back too as well. Raj, we are also like heads, head to the diving in first plunge into the deep end of what I like to call big cap season. And big cap
mm.
season is where every single NBA insider is most likely lying about where some player is interested to be traded to and which team is interested in them. And every day, it's the same story being refreshed. Jonas Valanciunas for 3 months now has been rumored to go to the Lakers. And just yesterday, after the Lakers played Memphis, Jonas Valanciunas now has a second suitor in the Memphis Grizzlies. And so this is the time of the year from December all the way up into the trade deadline where every single day some new rumor is going to be made up. Some guy's getting shopped. XYZ, go ahead. You got
I
something
was
in
gonna
mind
say,
on this?
is this the earliest that it's happened? Like I
Oh
don't
yeah,
remember it being
it's been loud, dude. This is like, and the Dennis Schroeder trade happened, so we'll discuss that in a second.
right,
Um,
but December 15th, like I don't remember that. I know that was a date that people would say, mark your calendar. This is when he is now eligible to be traded and conversations can occur. I don't remember it being December 15th, like hold your
yeah,
horses because we're gonna get action. That's just unheard of for me. But no, continue. I interrupted. I thought
yeah,
that's
yeah. So this
crazy.
is this is what I like to call big cap season, or the start of big cap season because it's everybody lying about who wants to go where. Our friend of the show, Paul, in the YouTube comments, talking about Jimmy Butler wanting to be his son.
Yeah,
Another hotly debated thing as Jimmy Butler's agent tried to take down our guy Shams Charania,
what a
only to
league we
be
have. What a
only to
league.
be like dismantled like 2 days later.
No, did,
Uh,
did, did you see the Heat owner retweeting the agent's tweet? Like, absolutely nuts. Mickey Harrison, shout out to Mickey Harrison, just retweeting
it's
the
awful.
agent's tweets that were attacking Shams Charania, the biggest reporter,
Yeah,
NBA reporter that exists. Just
yeah.
beautiful. No
Respect,
notes.
respect, respect our guy Shams. Just
He works hard,
and
man.
after winning the Lakers coaching war, JJ Redick versus Dan Hurley. I think he's earned himself a little bit of grace when it comes to it. But anyways, um, this is cap season, so a lot of people are going to be linking the Lakers to different players and whatnot. And one of the things that also happens during this time is we get a lot of folks within our fan base and even outside of our fan base, news accounts like you've mentioned, that make a case for players that we would make sense for us to move to not be moved.
Mm,
And so one of the players that we've discussed quite a bit, we discussed last season and we've discussed this season. D'Angelo Russell is somebody that we've discussed that the Lakers have to move. If you don't have a plan for keeping him beyond this season, extension wise, then you have to move him because it's not good salary cap management. And
mm,
you're not gaining any serious salary cap space by letting him just expire and leave for nothing. So it's flipping an asset for something that might help you out. And we don't have to get into all the details of who he's being linked to, like to Brooklyn and Dorian Finney-Smith or for Nikola Vucevic over in Chicago. There's tons of different ways you can go. He has a very decent salary. He's not a bad player. He's not a terrible player. He's not somebody who's gone and blown up his situation or anything like that. He's not somebody who's considered radioactive
yeah.
around the league. Just a guy who the Lakers, would probably like him, but they need help in other areas. So they'd be trading from a position of strength that they have to get something that they can shore up on their weak side. Go for it. You have something you want to say?
Oh no, keep going. Yeah.
So that being said, something came up last week that caught my eye, which I thought was very interesting, that I wanted to discuss, and it was that it's not something that just came up last week. It's something that's been coming up consistently since D'Angelo Russell has been sent to the bench, and that is people in the fan base and out of the fan base using plus minus data to make a case for D'Angelo Russell to be to not get traded or to
Mm,
be like considered one of the better players, and that maybe he should be starting and other guys should get moved out.
mm-hmm.
And so I'm not here to point out to people that I'm not here to tell people that they're wrong. I want to contextualize what it is, because I think when we contextualize these conversations, we learn a lot more about this. So I think D'Lo is like a plus 61. I think when I saw the Lakers Muse or the D'Lo Muse account, whichever one it was, they're doing those annoying long posts where they do every single plus 61, plus 59, plus 58, all the way
Oh,
down.
right.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
He's far and away from it. So
Yeah.
there's two specific things I wanted to bring up, right? And so the first thing is just common sense, which is if you see a guy who has gotten benched and he leads the team in plus minus, and the next guy that's on that list, no offense to you, Roger, is Jalen Hood Shafino, a guy who hardly plays basketball at all for the Lakers right now on the parent team. It should probably give you some pause and think to yourself, wait, there must be a reason why this number is so high, but everybody else is much more, more closer together, much more normalized. The Lakers as a whole have not been a good team this season. So there's that's definitely part of it.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is not to say that some players haven't benefited from positive lineups and some players haven't benefited or have been struck by
Mm-hmm.
negative lineups. But that's a big thing. That's a big, hold on a second. Can we just stop and just think about what we're talking about here? You have one guy that's a plus 60, and including your best players, AD and LeBron, are not nowhere near that. There's nobody in the plus 50s or 40s or 30s, whatever it is that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That usually means there's some outlier that for us, there are folks that are in analytics or data or something like that. You would look at that number and say, well, that seems like an outlier. That seems a little strange that number is so high. But a smart guy like JJ who looks at analytics, guys like LeBron and AD, who I don't know if they look at analytics, but they would probably encourage D'Lo playing with them more if he's that much of a positive impact on the lineups. And you and I both know that individual plus minus is a very, very flawed metric, because it can just mean you were on the floor at the same time somebody else got hot,
Mm-hmm.
or your team played really great defense. You might have had nothing to do with it. So that's my first thing. Am I fair in saying that maybe we should have some pause and
Yeah.
think about it common sense wise?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And there's a beautiful quote. I don't remember who said it, but it said numbers will tell you whatever you want. You know what I mean? It'll tell the story that you feel like you want to tell. And I think there's both sides to this, Vinay. I think like it's tough to ignore. And you mentioned D'Lo and JHS, and I have to look at in terms of the minutes played, right? I think that's where most people would go to next. Like JHS minutes are on garbage time, and
Yep.
D'Lo is still playing legit minutes.
Yep.
So obviously those minutes are winning for some reason, right? And I've seen cases for everything. It's because LeBron goes to the bench, and D'Lo's kind of taking over the ball in that situation. It's because our starters are terrible. It's because Austin Reeves can't defend. Whatever it is,
Sure.
that's the first place I guess I would start. Is obviously I like the plus minus. I don't put all of it into it. I do think there's some understanding that, like, hey, sometimes the numbers tell you what your eyes don't, and that means there's something you got to understand what the numbers are telling you, right? Like this goes for anything. This goes for finances. This goes for net ratings or whatever it is. For some reason, those units are doing well, and I'm sure the film and training staff is also looking at that and going, okay, why are those numbers doing well?
Yeah.
Like, what's the context of that? Are we playing against second units? Is that when D'Lo plays well? He also is in a role where he's playing against other teams' second units. His minutes are also very much tied to how well the team is doing, right? So whether
Yeah.
like if D'Lo's minutes go down when the Lakers aren't playing, then his net rating also gets impacted or doesn't get impacted as much. I think that's one part of it too. That's where I'm at with it. I think I understand it from both ends, and there's people who want to push the extremes, and I get it. I get that too. D'Lo's numbers are loud, and his plus minus is very loud.
Yeah.
Like him, LeBron and AD have a crazy plus, and almost every other player next to those two are a minus. And there's a lot of ways you can frame that. I do think his playmaking, and I do think stuff like that does help. He also has shot terrible from the floor for the last 2 games, and
Yeah.
it hasn't mattered to whether the Lakers win or lose or not, which I think is a part of this too. But I guess do you see that point as well? It's kind of like he's playing enough to where I think the numbers at least matter.
Sure.
Like where you have to at least check like what's going on during that.
Yeah.
Why do you do that? So I'll put that question to you, Vinay. Why are his minutes positive? At least from your hypothesis. Like what are you seeing that like why is he winning his minutes and other players aren't?
Yeah, so for me, it's the way I look at it is based on what when he ended up going to the bench. So this is the way that I approach doing it, right? So I look
Mm-hmm.
at the November 8th Philly game, and I look to see, all right, what was D'Lo's plus or minus per game, and again, you and I are crazy, so sometimes we can like photographically remember what actually happened in that game that resulted
Mm-hmm.
in the end situation, right? So they play Philly, a bad team, like they're not a good team, they're a really bad team. Plus 13. And then they play Toronto, a really bad team. If you remember, that's the game where we came out gangbusters. We were up by like 28 or something like that to start that game. He's plus 18 in that game. Then we play Memphis, good team. Only plays 20 minutes, plus 5. So again, a better
Right.
team, but his minutes
Less
come
minutes.
down. Smaller sample size. Then we go to San Antonio. And before I continue doing this, I want to be fair about this. I could do this with any player. The only
Sure.
reason I'm doing it with D'Lo is because we're using a plus minus metric. We're using a metric that I don't think that you should use if you want to make the case that D'Lo should continue to be on this team. If I wanted to make the case that D'Lo should continue being on the team, I'd talk about his freestyle playmaking, which does help the Lakers out. I would talk about his ability to get super hot in certain stretches when it does it. I think D'Lo's situation, him getting sent to the bench, is affecting his play to some degree. Like, I don't think he wants to be a bench guy. I don't think he envisions himself in the future being a bench guy.
Sure.
And we'll when we get to the segment, we'll talk about the contrast of what that is in Dennis Schroeder that I want to bring up. But continuing on, at San Antonio, a bad team, plays 30 minutes, plus 13. New Orleans, a bad team, only plays 20 minutes, not plus 9. Orlando, the game that we lost to the game winner, he had a rough shooting night, plus 2. Utah, the game I think they made a comeback against to make it a tight game. I think LeBron took it over. Plus 2. Denver, we get blown out. He only plays 18 minutes. He's a 0. Phoenix, we get blown out again, minus 23. So I could keep doing this over and over again. So when I keep going in, at some point it sort of balances out to some degree. But what is the theme that I'm seeing? Like, what is the core pattern that we see? So what I do is because there's not that many games, I just sort it by his biggest plus minus games. He only has 3 games where he has a negative plus minus. That's double digits, right? It's Minnesota, Phoenix, Miami, like minus 15, minus 23, minus 25. The team got its butt kicked. Everybody's plus minus is going to be terrible for that. Some worse than others. But what are the best ones? What are the best games that he's had? And I'll read the names of the teams and the plus minus off, and you tell me what you think the theme is that I'm trying to get at.
Mhm.
Lakers versus Portland, plus 29. Lakers versus San Antonio, plus 19. Lakers versus Toronto, plus 18. Lakers versus Sacramento, plus 18. Lakers versus Minnesota, plus 15. Lakers versus Toronto again, plus 14. Lakers versus San Antonio again, plus 13. Lakers versus the Philadelphia 76ers, plus 13. What do you think is the theme? It's obviously hard to see visually, but what do you think is the theme?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes to what I think what D'Lo's reputation has been, right? It's kind of like cook against the inferior defensive teams. And look, that's still an important factor in a regular season. That's important. That raises the floor of the team. But I think that's kind of that's what you're getting in. I think that's what the numbers are kind of getting at as
Yeah,
well, right? It's kind of like cooking against these, the bottom feeder type defensive teams. And again, against the better teams, he's either not playing as much or he's just not playing well.
right.
But these, bad teams, he's as they say in basketball, he's running the score up a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's one way to frame it. Yeah.
So when you take those two things, this is my
Yeah.
argument. When you take these two things and you talk about just the common sense of that plus minus number just being used, then you try to contextualize it with data. And then you add one more layer to it, Raj, which is that the Lakers are a bad defensive team no matter who they play. However, when they play against bad teams, they try to outscore them. And that's how they try to beat bad teams. They'll just try to outscore the other team because they know their defense is terrible as it is. It makes sense sometimes that D'Lo looks so good against bad defensive teams because what he's really great at, which is scoring the basketball, because he gets a lot of touches and he shoots really well. That his games, his plus minus games that are really good, are against bad defenses where he can kind of not run up the score, because I would imagine some of those games he's had important moments, but those are the teams that don't play well defensively, the teams that we're just trying to outscore. We're not really trying to play defensive against him. Is where he looks really good. But the situations where it's not like that, the teams that we're playing, Orlando, Denver, Memphis, OKC, where they're playing good defense against us, I think JJ Redick runs into this situation where he's like, I've got to get more defense on the floor, and D'Lo is not giving that to me at the level that I need it to be in order for us to be successful. And often you see like his plus minus be a little bit more nominal or his minutes be a lot smaller when it comes to it. So my whole thing with this whole segment was like, if you're going to make a data-driven case for D'Lo to be on this team, this is not the way to do it. Because when you contextualize the data, what it tells me is that he's basically going off against bad teams. And if he's only good against bad teams and not good against good teams in a role where he's being asked to do it off the bench against bench units, that's a big issue for the Lakers. And that's something that the Lakers have to navigate. JJ has to navigate.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's where I'm at too. And again, I think there's a way to put it that D'Lo does help this team, and his ball handling is 100% necessary, and he allows these second units to kind of flourish offensively in a way that they wouldn't be able to if he wasn't on the team. I think the net rating again is tough. You just look at the last 15 games of the season, he's actually a minus 0.3, and the Lakers weren't playing well. They're playing 500 basketball during this time, but the other guys who's getting significant minutes within that is Gabe, who's minus 0.5. And then you look at the star numbers, AD is a minus 3.5 during that stretch. LeBron is a minus 9 in the last 15 games. So like you look at the net rating, and I think no one would be like, LeBron's, D'Lo's playing than LeBron during that situation. But yeah, it's tough. And I do think I think the whole center on, don't trade D'Lo is kind of on what the return would be. I think that's mostly what people are concerned of. And I think that's a very fair, worry. I think it's a very fair concern of if you trade D'Angelo Russell for some of the packages that are floating out there, and you don't get another ball handler back or some type of scorer. You mentioned as freelance scoring, freelance playmaker. I think that's a fair concern. But yeah, I mean, he didn't get benched for no reason. Like, there's a reason he's now not starting. And I think JJ started off the season. I do think JJ wanted that to work.
For sure.
I forgot who put it out, but someone tweeted that. Renee, remember all summer, and the reason Darvin Ham was kind of fired was everyone pushed this. That starting lineup was 23-10 when they played. I have not heard that number in a very long time. That number has gone gone out the window. Yeah. So and D'Lo obviously was a part of that, and now he's not. I think Lakers will look to trade him in some capacity this season. But yeah, it's interesting. I do think he's important. I do think the numbers scream louder than they're supposed to be. But it is loud when you look at everyone else being a negative. I think it's very easy to again, if you're just pointing out and you're trying to find reasons for why. And obviously, D'Lo has a fan base that's makes themselves heard in a way
He's
as
a
well.
former core Laker guy, so
Yeah,
I totally understand it. Like, I don't have any personal feelings against D'Lo.
right.
We just have too many guys that do all the stuff that he does, and I just we really need defense, and he's got the biggest salary that is expiring, and that might be valuable salary cap wise for us to get there. So that's very interesting. Um, Raj, we should discuss some of the trade. A couple
Mm.
of the at least the one trade that's happened so far. We don't have to discuss Thomas Bryant,
Hmm.
but a trade that we were very very happy. I think both you and I were very happy. Didn't go in the Lakers' favor, which is the Dennis Schroeder being traded from the Brooklyn Nets to the Golden State Warriors for 2 first round picks, basically, because I think they also had a second round pick swap that they sent to each
2
other.
seconds.
Dennis Schroeder's now a Golden State Warrior, and I wish the best of luck to Golden State Warrior fans because they're very hyped for him to replace that DeAnthony Melton role. Um, we had talked about it on the coaches' den that one of the things you're going to have to run into is if you trade for Dennis Schroeder, he's going to want to start. He's not going to go to any situation where he's going to be asked to be a bench guy. He's a contract year, so he's going to want to start. Lo and behold, a day after the trade gets announced, Shams tweets out that the Warriors are, they believe that a Steph Dennis Schroeder backcourt is, can definitely work in the future, which it might. I'm not going to say it's not. It's a different situation for him. Dennis is a very different type of basketball player for what that Warriors team does. So I'll be very interested to see how that works out for them. But you and I both breathe a sigh of relief because Dennis was a guy that we did not want on this team. Not because he's not a good player, he doesn't have tenacity or anything. It's just I don't want to give up assets for a guy like Dennis who will take away touches from the rest of the guys. What were your thoughts on that move?
Yeah, I saw I was probably a bigger fan of Dennis than others. Obviously, I didn't think he fit kind of with the Lakers. I mean, he does give a level of competitiveness and fire that I wish some of the Lakers had at times, and that helps in a regular season setting. It just does. He's always diving on the floor. He's also a very high percentage free throw shooter who has some antics to get to the line, but when he's on your team, you use it, especially end of games situations. It's very helpful. I think he'll help the Warriors, and they've already reported, Renee, that he's going to start next to Steph, which
it's gonna be fascinating.
which makes some sense, right? I think there was some like Dennis Schroeder also wants to be paid. I think he's coming up on a free agency. If I have,
He's a free agent this year, right? He's expiring.
Yeah, and he's been playing well, and I'm sure he's like, yeah, I want to start. And I don't know, something about Dennis taking Klay Thompson's spot just doesn't feel right to me. There's something wrong there. But no, he's gonna help the team. I think he's a fantastic defensive guard who is gonna need the ball, but they needed more ball handlers. I don't know what happened to Pajemski this year, but I mean, I'm seeing Warrior fans want him to play in the G League for a little bit. It's like, man, dude, you let Klay walk so that Pods could start. I mean, or maybe there was other reasons. But yeah, like I think he'll help them. It's an interesting trade. I thought he would go for more than seconds. I don't know. You're more in the kind of trade value world, but he's playing so well. It's December 15th. I'm surprised they accepted, this offer so early. But and they got DeAnthony Melton, who will be hurt all year and will be a free agent anyway after this. So they got no young prospects back. They really just got 3 second rounders while giving one out. Interesting trade, but I think Dennis will help them. I think he'll help them. At least he's a competitive guy, and he'll help them defensively. They're already a good defense, but I think he at least fills in the talent from where Melton's lost.
But I was gonna say Melton had like a crazy wingspan, didn't he? Like Melton's like 6'3", but he has like a 6'10" wingspan, something crazy like that. That might be too crazy of a wingspan, but I thought that was like one of the advantages to having him.
Mhm.
But obviously he's very
Yeah,
injury prone.
they'd rather have Melton for sure. I mean,
Oh yeah, for
that's
sure, for sure. Yeah,
mm,
I think Dennis will help them out defensively, like to some degree. The real question is how he integrates with that offense because that flex action stuff and all the
is
running
not
around,
his offense.
that's not his offense. And I don't know if you saw the Draymond quote where he was just like, somebody posted it where Draymond's just like, yeah, we know that he's not like a fit for like the way
Right.
that we play basketball, so we have to adjust to him. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, that's already that's like already bad for me. Like I was like, this is not going to go the way you think because like Draymond is like the at
Is the
times
point guard.
Draymond is the point guard for that team. So it's like I'm very curious to see like is Dennis going to be the one throwing the screens for Steph now, and is he going to do it every single time Steph comes down the floor? Um, is Dennis going to be expected to get touches like as he
Yeah.
brings the ball up the floor? How is that going to work for him? So I'm curious to see how that works out.
Yeah, I think like he's kind of the what they lost in Jordan Poole, kind of, here's a quick guard that can
Sure.
beat guys off the dribble. Hopefully don't piss off Draymond in the same way, but but I'm sure he will. By the way, Dennis, if they thought Jordan Poole was, never mind. But like Dennis is a competitive dude that I'm sure gets under skins.
Did they have beef? Like, wasn't there a moment between Draymond and Dennis in when we played them in the Warriors
Oh,
series?
it might have been. You might be right. Yeah, I
There was a
don't
moment between. I mean, not that's going to carry over, but I
yeah,
remember like him trying to get under Draymond's skin, and Draymond was like mad. I
yeah.
remember he took like the ball and he like pushed it in Dennis's face or something like. I
Oh
forgot
yeah.
it's
Oh
something
yeah. I
like
do.
that.
Oh
Something
yes, I
like that
do.
happened.
Do
Yeah,
remember? Yeah, Dennis will get under your skin. I mean, that's
yeah,
no doubt that's gonna happen. But him and Steph. I mean, I just think Vinay, they needed guys who can like dribble. Like you watch them play,
for
it's
sure. Yeah,
like they have just no offensive creation off of Steph. And Dennis's I guess limitations as a shooter. Is a little less concerning when obviously you're playing next to Steph Curry and Buddy
yeah,
Hield and whatever other shooting that they have out there. So I think it helped him. And he's not a super solve. And I don't know, some of the quotes out of the Warriors is like, "That's our move, and we're good to go." It's like
I'm sure it isn't. I'm sure they'll probably. Mike Dunleavy Jr. seems like a smart guy. I think they'll continue to do so. But shout out to our guy Paul for trying to get a first rounder out of the Lakers to the Nets for Dennis. I'm glad that did happen. And shout out to our guy Nico, who's very very excited for the Dennis
yeah,
Schroeder
very
addition.
pro Dennis.
I'm going to have my notifications open for Warriors games when he's watching those games because I need to like when he
The
starts coming
first,
to the conclusions. Yeah, when Dennis is on the floor for like 12 straight minutes and everybody's just like, bro, why is Dennis playing so much? Or
the
when he
first
looks
look
on
off of
stage.
Steph,
Yeah.
like
Oh
to
my
take the
god,
mid range
it's
jumper.
gonna be
It's
great.
like
It's gonna be great. I just want to be there for the reactions. So and I love those guys. Those guys are great guys. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of works out. Um, Raj, we are right at the hour, so I don't want to go too far into the 115. Do you want to hit some of these questions that we
yeah,
have? There was one trade proposal that we have in here that we can discuss.
yeah. I thought we'd go through these YouTube comments, and
Yeah.
if anyone last minute wants to throw some in there, maybe we can do a few of those. But yeah, I'll start with this one here. This was kind of the conversation for the day, and I put this in the chat. But Daniel Berry Sports Highlights says a no on Lonzo.
Yep.
And Vinay, I'm not a trade machine guy. I did try it out today, and I'm good. Like I don't know how I could not get a trade to go through with just Gabe and like minimum salaries, and so I kind of gave up.
Yep.
But is there number one? Two questions to you. Number one, is there a money that works that you know about where it's Gabe plus filler salary that works, or does it have to be D'Lo? And number two, is it just complete no on Lonzo, whatever the package is?
So first, I would say it's a complete no on Lonzo,
Okay.
just because his injury risk is super, super high. Like it's very like we haven't seen 20 straight games of him playing 20 minutes a game without any issues or hiccups. Like that's already a huge, huge red flag.
Hmm.
And again, somebody who really like Lonzo. I think he is cut from the same cloth as a guy like Jason Kidd. Uh, but the other thing is the only way you'd get to it is like you'd have to send like Vando and Gabe. Like if you
Mm,
had to, like if somebody held a gun to Rob's head and said you have to trade for Lonzo, and we'll take any deal that you send, then it has to be like Gabe and Vando, like two
okay.
guys that are bad, technically bad salaries for the Lakers. That you would do because that would equal like 22 million if we don't want to use the D'Lo salary. Otherwise, you have to use the D'Lo salary or the Rui
Right.
salary to get to that number. But I'm just it's nothing against him. It's just the injury risk is so high, Raj. Like And again, you run into a situation where he's an expiring contract, I think, next season. I think he is.
Mhm.
And like, it just,
Yeah.
you don't know what you're going to get out of him. Honestly, what I'd rather do is let him end up wherever he ends up and then take a flyer on him. Bring him into camp, take a flyer on him if he wants to come back to LA, which I don't know if he wants to. I don't know if his dad wants back on the Lakers. He might just go to Charlotte and go play with his brother. That
That's
would make a
true.
lot of sense for me, for him to do. So it'll be very interesting. But yeah, I'm not on board with that.
Yeah, I guess it's more from a sentimental value of like,
No,
would love to
for
have
sure. I get it.
Lonzo back.
Give me
And
back
again,
my son.
yeah, and then right, you have a few of those in the league, but yeah, with Lonzo, that's a beautiful basketball fit if he was able to figure it out. And I don't know if the story is crazy. I guess he had like 2 surgeries on both legs and just miraculously is back in a timetable that most people didn't see it. So hopefully he has a successful year this season. I don't know how many games he's played, but I think he's played a good amount so far. It's not enough to like convince teams to throw crazy. The Lakers are Vinay actually heaviest favorite for Lonzo Ball. However much you put in that stock today from Bovada, I think put the numbers out. People keep your money, by the way. Like just like what are you?
Don't Yeah, please don't gamble on that stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah,
where
do
like
something else, but don't gamble on that specifically.
keep your money, man. Just stop. You'd rather just burn it. I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah,
But
or
yeah,
don't send it to us. Send it to me
right.
and Raj. You can message
Yeah,
us and just send it to us. We'll take
exactly.
it and then we'll shout you out,
Right.
even though we
If you
don't monetize this pod.
if Lonzo becomes a Laker, we'll send it back.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we'll do that.
Uh, but yeah, I'm with you. I thought there would be a way to get him without trading any like real necessary salary, but I guess it's not. So yeah, the Lonzo Ball dream is probably a year or two away from being a year or two away. So and he's still
Okay.
young, so you never
Yeah,
know.
still young. Yeah.
All right, let's go to Ashan Pierce, D'Lo, JHS, ML. Why am I blanking on ML?
Yeah, I don't know who I'm. Oh, Maxwell Lewis.
Oh, Maxwell Lewis. Okay, wow. Okay, for DFS Sharp and is Maxwell Lewis necessary? By the way, in this, can this get done without his
Raj doesn't
$1
want you guys
million?
to trade all of his G League guys that
Yeah,
he's interviewed.
for $1 million salary, like can't figure that out somewhere else.
We
Um,
could probably swap in like Christian Wood or something like that for him instead.
yes, let's
Let's
do
do that.
that. Sorry, so D'Lo JHS minimum salary for Dorian Finney, Dayron Sharp, and Cam Johnson. I'm guessing Renee, this cost you both your for at least protections on one and unprotected on the other at the minimum. Right? I don't
Yeah,
know. I
probably.
just
Yeah.
think that would cost you both.
Cam is going to cost you at least a first for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, where are you at with this trade? Or is this a go through for you?
Depending on the cost, what the pick cost is for this, I would consider doing it.
Mm,
I think, uh, if I'm not mistaken, the salary doesn't work. You'd actually have to do like D'Lo because Cam and DFS make like 30
30.
something million
Mm,
dollars, so it's not enough money to add up to it. But I think the variation, Ashana, that I think I've seen of this is like a D'Lo, Rui, and a first for DFS Cam, and maybe if you can get Sharp, that's great. But I like to like if I can get Sharp, I try to get like Zaire Williams or something like that. Um, but if you do something like that, I don't think I'd be against it, especially if you can bring back a young guy like Zaire or Dayron. I'm not against that. There is always going to be some cost to swapping guys out. Cam, a little bit better of a 3-and-D fit for the Lakers.
mm-hmm.
DFS very clearly a 3-and-D fit for the Lakers. We are at a point where we have enough on-ball guys. Like at that point, you'll have AD, Braun, Austin, and Dalton being the guys who will have the ball in their hands to try and score. And so I would imagine, that's enough on ball stuff, and then you have enough defense kind of being handled
Yeah,
out.
yeah. I like that deal. I think that's the most like talent you would get. You get 2 wings, 2 of the top, I guess, wings that people want on on your team. Daron Shaw, very nice, athletic, big. I think he had a really good game today as
Yeah,
well, just driving the price up, I guess, for him.
Daron's I like to call Daron a furniture mover. If you guys don't know what that means, he is a guy who doesn't beat you by like being super athletic. He's a guy who's just he's a big body. Like he's gonna
Yeah,
move you around and make it very difficult for you to box him out or to grab rebounds over him.
yeah. Right. And so I like that package. But now I'm just gonna edit this question a little bit
Yeah.
because I think it's interesting. Is this front office trading like 2 firsts for Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith? My answer is no.
No, I don't
I
think they
don't see
will.
it.
Yeah. I think they would
Okay.
trade one. I don't think they'd trade two.
Okay.
I think they would try to. They'd probably go to the Nets and say, "Hey, we'll give you." Well, first and foremost, they probably won't trade for both guys. They'll try and trade for one of them
Mhm.
because they don't want to add to the cost. But I think if it was that package, they would try to get away with doing a protected first and then throwing in seconds. And if Sean Marks is smart, he'll be like, "No, you got to unprotect that first, and you still have to send the seconds." I think that's what the trade would end up being. Um, and who knows? Like maybe the Nets take it, maybe the Nets don't. I don't know what it would be. But you're only your offer is only as good as whatever the competitive offer is for that player. So, but from a
Yeah.
fit perspective, I like it. I
Me
like adding 3-and-D guys to this team a little bit more.
Me too. And to me, like I think we're in a league where way more teams think they're in it than they aren't. Right. This might be the most teams that like think they're in the mix. You look at the Western Conference, and I think 1 through like 11, not one, maybe like 2 through 10 are separated by 2 or 3 games. And
Yeah.
I feel like Brooklyn's gonna wait till February, whenever it is, to do a deal. So I don't know if the Lakers have that type of time. We'll go through these other ones pretty quick, because we're on the
Right.
110
Yeah. Right on
mark.
the 110. Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah, Cheney's administrator says need to get some yappers on the
We need some
team.
yappers. I'm
I
with you,
agree.
Chetty. We need some
I'm
yappers.
which is strange because like this is a veteran team with a very loud coach,
Yeah.
right? You should have some people who are talking on the defensive end. All right, George, you think Lakers, Horns, and Stack can be a legit staple play when the chip is down compared to Jokic, Murray, 2-man, and Sacramento pistol action? I like their Horns action. I think that is a consistent action that they can go to. I think it involves all 3 of their best players. Stack basically 2 screens back to back. I think that is a legit staple play. I think it works better when you have a shooter within that. But I guess George is basically asking Vinay, do the Lakers have an action they go to that they can go to when it's high pressure? And to me, that action is like Austin Reeves, here's the ball, and like you run
Yeah.
our late game offense. But yeah, where you at with that?
Yeah, I think sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Like, it just depends on who's going. If Braun is rolling that game, you're going to get a lot of Braun iso ball towards the end of the game. If Braun is not going, I think you're going to get Austin AD 2-man action. And I think that's really been the main thing. Like, I haven't seen them run late game like sets like
Yeah.
at all. So I think that's usually the way that it goes. And for the most part, it's been successful. It's not like we haven't been good at running it. We just can't defend. That's the number one issue.
Right. Yeah. I think the offense has been fine. We just need some more
Yeah.
defensive intensity. Okay. Last one. Shout out our guy Paul.
Oh,
Is there an Ingram trade you like, Vinay?
yeah. I want to send D'Lo, Rui, JHS, and a first round pick unprotected for Brandon Ingram, and I don't think they're going to get a significantly better deal than that. I think Rui is an offensive guy who can come off the bench or start for them if they need to, especially considering that we have no clue what's going to happen with Zion. You get a first round pick, we'll unprotected for you. You can take the later one, the 2031 one, or whichever one it is. D'Lo isn't expiring, so you at least get out of that contract, or you can flip it again because if David Griffin's good at his job, he'll flip him over again before the deadline's over. And JHS is just cannon fodder.
Yeah.
So that I can make Raj upset.
I'll close with this. I still can't get past we gave you 80 4 years ago, and like here's I can't get over that. But I know like people just go right past that. It's just these are humans, and like it's just that's a tough thing. We gave you 80 4 years ago, and here's the best chip from that deal. Here you go, right back to you for
let me ask you something, Raj. If Ingram comes back healthy, I'm going to add a variation to Paul because Paul's question is really good. If the Pelicans come to you and say, "Give us Rui, D'Lo, and Dalton," and you have a deal.
Oh God, man, I probably throw an extra first
Instead of giving up Dalton.
Instead of giving Dalton. How about you?
Interesting.
Are you giving up Dalton in that deal?
I'd probably try to ask him for somebody else back to help us out, like on the wings. Like I haven't looked through their roster, so I don't know who they have available. But like,
Yeah,
I'd ask them for like their backup, so like Trey Jemison or something like that. Whoever they have as their backup center, like just you got to send us another body because I think losing 3 bodies is like a big deal to your rotation. in general. So, but I mean, dude, Ingram's got to be healthy. Like I gotta like Iron Man, bionic ankle, whatever, dude. Like I can't lose him for the season because it's gonna be bad. If we trade for him and then he can't play.
Yeah, right. Well, just quick in. If it has to come to it, it's February, it's deadline. David Griffin's like 2 firsts, and you have Brandon Ingram. And I'm not moving off 2 firsts. You don't give me 2 firsts, Brandon Ingram is finishing his year here in New Orleans. Are you sending it over? Sending over 2 firsts?
No. I'm
No?
probably calling Rich Paul and be like, yo, how bad does your guy want to come back to LA? And we'll move the guys that we need to make.
See, I don't think David Griffin cares. Like, you want to burn my franchise twice? All right, cool. Like we're you want to throw me through? Can you throw me through hell twice?
I've got no other offers, but I'm going to hold them hostage against you guys. Can you imagine that? That'd be so funny.
Bro, Rich Paul this summer is like, hey, go get DeJounte Murray. And, David Griffin's like, all right, brought in DeJounte Murray. Whole franchise burns.
And he's just like, oh, we got your guy. He's a clutch guy. So now we can work out this extension for your other clutch guy. And he's like, no. You got to give him max money or else he's leaving. It's like, what? No. But yeah, it's a rough position for David Griffin to be in. But Raj, as always, this was awesome. We want to thank all the folks that were in YouTube and sent us over their chats and their questions. This is an awesome conversation about how the Lakers look in Memphis. And for the folks that joined us from the start, we appreciate you. If you joined us later, you can always find it at the Lakers Detailed YouTube, or I'll end up uploading this to Apple and Spotify tonight. You can watch the video episode then as soon as it's uploaded and enjoy it on your own time. But whether you're listening to this now or you're listening to this later, we hope you're doing well, and we hope that you're having a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. And if nothing else, we'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.
Peace.